Hello, everyone. This is Armando Perez-Carreno, and I'm here with the one and only Mike McAlister. Welcome, Mike.
Well, thanks for having me so much.
Oh, it's really an honor to have you on the call. I am a big fan of Ollie, as I think everyone who has heard of it, touched it, used it is as well. So I'm very excited to have you on the call. A vast majority of people who will watch this will already know who you are, but for those who don't, could you give us like a very brief intro of how you got into all this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been in the WordPress space for a long time, 15, 20 years, somewhere in there. And I've been making products in the WordPress space for a large part of that, and usually around WordPress themes, sometimes plugins, but I've spent a lot of my time making WordPress themes. I've had theme companies, and now I'm working on a product called Ollie, which is a block theme that ties into all of this new cool stuff in WordPress, full site editing, patterns, and all of this new technology. So that's where I'm spending my time now.
That's exciting. Ollie, for those of you who don't know, is an absolute jewel to work with. I used it for the first time on a production site for a client. Like we built a design from scratch. I was not thinking of using Ollie at the moment. We just designed the custom design, and I'm not a designer. We'll get into that in a few, but nice design and everything. When it came time to implement, I saw Ollie, installed it. Ollie Pro wasn't there, so I didn't have Figma files or anything for that. And just started putting our custom design into the site using Ollie, and the experience was marvelous. It just worked out. And what I found astonishing was that once I did the first pass, I was like, okay, well, let's go into the mobile part now, right? And you expect everything to be a mess. And we moved into mobile, and it all looked great out of the box. I was just like, yeah, Mike knows what he's talking about. So you come from a design background? Originally?
Yeah, I've been a designer effectively since high school. I've been designing just forever. And that's me. That's my essence is as a designer. I'm also a software engineer. I'm all these things, but it all revolves around my passion as a designer. So
that makes sense. And speaking from my side of things, I'm originally a developer, software engineer, not a designer. I came into design later in the game just because of applications and web. So for those of us who are in, and I think there's many of us in this sort of same boat, what is it that makes your design in Ollie such a breeze to use? I understand, obviously, there's a design system involved, and we'll talk about that a little more, but what do you think, and maybe this is related to block things in general, but what do you think has changed that sort of starts to make it click, even for those who are not designers?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it does lead into block themes in general. Now, obviously, Ollie has kind of my special touch, so it might be, a little bit in design fidelity might be a little bit higher, but yeah, I think, and for those who don't know, WordPress block themes they're like the old school WordPress themes in that they apply a style to your site. They provide the kind of typography and templates, but with block themes, all of these designs, these templates, the typography, all this can be controlled in the WordPress site editor now. So it's all kind of wrapped in a almost no code interface. If you want it to be code, it can be. But what that means is instead of a design being locked up in a template in CSS files, all of that immediately becomes available to you in the editor. So any design that I ship, if I make the typography look a specific way, you can go in there easily, take a few sliders, change it how you want it. And also what that means, as Armando kind of was hinting at, is that this effectively provides you a design system. Now, it's not as a design system as you may think of it in a big complex organization. They're almost like design guardrails. And so the themes come with, or at least Ollie does, a lot of presets that are kind of there to help guide your design. So when you put something like a pattern onto a page, it's already designed. It already has the spacing kind of nice and generous spacing. The typography is set up in a way that automatically scales down to mobile devices. And it has a color palette that is like easily customizable and just looks good out of the box. So, you know, instead of, you know, like the old school themes, having to kind of get in there with your hands, coding things and moving things around, it really simplifies it. And kind of once it hits the page, it's ready to go. You add your content, or you can customize it as needed. So it effectively opens up a world of design that we didn't have in WordPress before. But I think it also empowers people who maybe don't have a ton of design experience, kind of empowers them a little bit more to kind of run with it and easily tweak the dials and still get something that looks really nice at the end of it.
And you touch on an excellent point. The design systems that maybe someone as a developer does not come in knowing out of the box. I remember in the Elementor days, before using Gutenberg or block editing or full site editing, global fonts and global styles was a game changer, and it came way after, like way down the line. And I was like, oh, well, this actually is helpful. So having this here from the start, from pretty close to the beginning, the ability to have these predefined, and it's something I sort of made it click for me in Ollie specifically, having just a small set, and maybe you can speak to this a little more, but a smaller set of, hey, these are my font sizes that I'm going to just use across my site. Extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. And these are the 2 fonts or 3 fonts, or these are the weights that I'm going to use. And these are the 5 colors that I'm going to use. And just narrowing it down to that, and not having a color picker and not having a bunch of other things that then can make your site look like a circus, right? So what comes into designing that? At what point should one, when they're maybe designing a theme for themselves or a custom site for a client, at what point does one start determining how many font sizes, which font sizes? Do you do that in Figma when you're starting out? Do you do that once you've had a full layout and then you create those styles? How do you go about that as a designer, getting that sort of base so that then the rest of the layout can all match?
These are such great questions. I love this intersection of kind of software and design. And so, yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, we all love to customize things, right? It's the first thing we want to do with a design or a website or anything. We love customizing it. And so, yeah, when you go to customize it, you know, in some page builders, you have as many options as you want to customize it. And unfortunately, sometimes that means by the end of it, your layout looks pretty wild, right? You might have 3 or 4 fonts in one section, and you got just your typography hierarchy is all goofy. And so, you know, options and tooling is not always the best for getting the best structure for your site. So, you know, within the block editor and with Ollie and things like that, we do kind of limit the typography options. Again, going back to that, like being able to design with guardrails, because the more you get into design and website building, you realize that like the most important part is your content, right? That's what is just key. You're like Google is reading your content. It's reading the titles, the hierarchy of titles and content. That's so important. So, and also now it's reading whether or not your typography is legible. Is it too big? Is it too small? So these are very important things when you're designing your website. So when I'm designing, I take that into account. As somebody who loves design, I love typography. And so I design a typography scale, highest and lowest fonts, and then everything in between. And then it's fluid so that it scales down perfectly for mobile. And I encourage people to stick to that. I think you said there's maybe six font sizes in Ollie. And what happens if you stick to that system, like most design systems, again, you're getting a very cohesive feel across your whole page. or not just your whole page, but your whole website. So if you're using the same font size for your H2s everywhere, it looks great. If you're using the same spacing, it looks great. And staying within those systems or those settings for typography and spacing, you end up with something that looks really nice out of the box. You don't have to go and find your own font size. In fact, you shouldn't, because it's already been like measured out. Like I have painstakingly made sure that it looks as good as possible out of the box, so that you don't have to. Like, that's the whole part of it. And if you buy into the system, it makes your life a lot easier. You design a lot faster, you publish sooner, and you're just back to doing whatever you were before that. So yeah, leaning into the presets, because that's where that's what they're there for, and it's just going to give you a much better outcome in the end.
Right. And just to disclose this for everyone, doesn't mean you're tied to those. It just means that it's a better way of doing it for your own peace of mind. Right. Because look, I really started noticing it once I started using design systems, because this might resonate with some people. Let's say you're on Elementary, or whichever tool you want, or Wix, or wherever you are. You build a homepage. Then you go and build a contact page. And then you go and build another landing page for whatever product. And then you realize that you need to make a change in the header style in one of those pages. And so you change it, and then you realize you have to go and change it in other places, right? And so it's a mess. And so, well, okay, having global fonts, global colors, okay, that helps. Good. But then, let's say you're a developer that builds client websites. And so then your customers are going to go in, and maybe they're going to create their own landing pages, create their own content, or even just post content on their blog using the blog editor. So if you provide these guardrails like you were explaining, then you don't have to give them a detailed guide on, okay, so you're going to, for headings of this type, you're going to use this heading and then change the font to this size and then make this adjustment. Out of the box, you've already set it up in the theme, which can be modified now in the front end as well, so that all H1s have this particular style, and all H2s and all H3s. And that's not how it works out of the box in just like overall WordPress. Well, sort of, but it doesn't look nice. So now with obviously 2024 and forward, it does. But it's great, because now whoever can just go in and, like you were saying, just follow the hierarchy. Maybe I have an H1, then an H2, and then H3. Everything makes sense and it's cohesive without people having to think about which type of title am I adding, which type of heading, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, and to your point, those things are already mapped out, and because with Ollie Pro, we also provide the Figma files for all of those designs, and they match. So any designer who's ever worked in Figma knows you end up setting up a design system there, and maybe use tokens to match the typography to the website. And if you stay in that system, it just works, you know? And so, yeah, you can, and then like every tool, once you get more familiar with it, you go to your second, third, fourth site. By the time you're there, you kind of know how the system works in WordPress, and you can really move quick, because you know modifying, you know, this typography level is going to affect it here. And yeah, it just, you start to get the kind of the new paradigm, and it does take a little bit getting used to. I'm very upfront with people. Like, some people still have trouble with the block editor and the site editor, and you probably should have trouble with it, because it's not intuitive from where we came from in WordPress. There's a lot of new concepts that are very powerful, but they're not entirely, there's no comparison to old WordPress. So things like these global styles, like you're saying, being able to go in and change the typography or colors globally or on the block level. Things like patterns and synced patterns, which are almost like global components. Though that's a huge thing. Another way of keeping your site design cohesive, and maybe only updating it in one spot and then sending those changes through your site. So there's a lot of these things that they're not entirely intuitive out of the box, but once you get your brain around those things, it really changes how you build your website from the beginning. If you can kind of know what sections might need to be global, you might make those synced patterns to begin with. So yeah, there's a lot to dig into, and part of Ollie's mission is helping people shepherd into this new era through tutorials and things like that. But yeah, it's really powerful once you get the hang of it. But the learning curve is there; it's real. You gotta get over it, and but it's better on the other side.
It is definitely better on the other side. What do you recommend for someone who's maybe thinking of using Ollie for their site? Obviously, they can just jump in and start getting patterns and building stuff, right? But if maybe it's someone who's building it for a client or for themselves, but they want to spend the time and do it right, do you recommend that they grab the Ollie Pro Figma files and maybe start grabbing some of those patterns and putting them in their design and making adjustments and then implementing? Or what would be the workflow that you would recommend, maybe for professionals in the space?
Sure. I would just get the free Ollie theme. It's totally free on WordPress.org. You can just go into WordPress and type Ollie and install it. And that really will give you a lot to play with up front with no commitments whatsoever. It's not a limited theme. It's not a light theme or anything like that. It's totally, you can build production sites on it. People do it all the time. And it comes with, yeah, exactly. Like I've seen some really great sites built on it, like almost enterprise level sites built with just like Ollie, which is awesome. It shows the power of it. So, and Ollie comes with around 50 patterns. Patterns are just like pre-made design sections. They could be as big as a hero section or a card design or blog post layouts. And it comes with all these things, and they're all designed cohesively, so they click together, kind of like Legos and a layout. So I tell people to just like get that for free, set up a local site or live site even, and just start playing with it to get the feel of what it's like to build with patterns and customize patterns and tweak your typography in the global styles panel and figure out the header and footer, which are template parts. So kind of getting through that first layer of terminology and figuring out where things are in the UI. You can just use Ollie to do that, or you can use one of the default themes. They're all kind of the same. And that will help you really kind of get your head around it. And then if you want to take it to the next level, if you want more layouts and things like that, you could get something like Ollie Pro, which just comes with more patterns and more styles and things like that. It comes with the Figma file and the Slack community. So it comes with all those, but you don't have to do that to start building with it. And that kind of reminds me of something I also tell people often about this stuff, is that the power of this new stuff isn't in the themes particularly. It kind of like, it used to be that the themes did a lot, sometimes they were just style layers, and sometimes, we had these mega themes that did everything, big drop-down menus, mega menus, and all this stuff. But the power actually is in the WordPress interface now. Themes are just a kind of a layer that ties into this powerful interface. So the sooner you learn the WordPress interface and the design tools, learn how blocks or groups work and stacks and rows and the columns, when to use columns and when to, like learning all of that, you kind of build a universal skill set in WordPress. And so it doesn't matter what theme you install, a block theme you install, you can use those tools in any of them. And Ollie is just a really nice layer for that. So I just tell people, like, start learning that. It's the future. It's not going anywhere. And the sooner you learn it, the faster you can build with block themes.
That's great advice. I even have found that you can have a good block theme like Ollie and build a site. And if you go to 2024 or another block theme for debugging purposes or just for kicks, everything stays there. All the layouts, all the content, it's all still there and everything still works, except of course if you have some custom blocks in the theme, but most of the time you'll have them maybe in plugins. And so maybe typography, padding, margins, some things change, headers, but the rest of it is essentially there. And that speaks to the power of what you were saying, this new version of the interface that allows WordPress content and and layouts to be agnostic of really the theme. It's just, it's yours. If you want to restyle it, you can. Everything stays there, travels with you. You can even copy it from one site to another. And it just works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It just, because Ollie is just using the native blocks that come in WordPress. So they're just content. Now, if you switch to 2024, it might look a little rough. It might, and that's something we're actually going to be able to fix soon, so that you switch over and it's just going to know, it's going to path or create a path to the styles that they have defined, and it'll look a lot better. That's just a bigger initiative that's going on in WordPress that's not specific to Ollie, but just being able to have those pathways so that people can move a lot easier between block themes. And to that point, I kind of, after spending 2, 3, 4 years now building block themes, I think we're going to spend a lot less time switching themes going forward. It used to be like maybe every year you try to find a new theme, or people want to switch their themes out. But the way this is all architected, and like I said, it's kind of decoupled from the theme in that all the power lies in WordPress. I think that the theme is going to be less of something you have to change, in that, like, instead you just go in and change the parts of your site that you want.
Right.
If you want to change the typography in a major way, like maybe you would do for, in the old school themes, you would just get a new theme to kind of switch up the style. You don't have to do that. You could just go into the global styles and you add a serif instead, and you tweak it, and maybe you want to change the spacing a little. Like, you can just do all that on a more granular level. And I think that just causes a lot of less headaches overall. We're not jumping themes. And that's not to say you should even, buy into Ollie and all that. I'm just saying in general, I feel like that's where we're going with this. And I think that was the intention, right? It was to decouple it and put the power in WordPress so that we can get away from having to hop from solution to solution every few years, and instead just really dive into WordPress and say, no, we can do that here. And we can make the content more portable and all of that stuff along the way.
And I'll tell you what, I never thought I'd say this, but there's a client side that we built using a default theme.
Yeah.
We
Isn't that crazy?
used 2024 and just used all core blocks. Of course, we built some custom blocks for them, but it looks fantastic. And why? Because that theme, for the particular theme, aligned with the font styles. It was more of an editorial type thing. And it works. It's not just like a placeholder anymore for now. It's a real, you can actually use that theme. And like you were saying, with Ollie, with 2024, with 2025, whichever theme you're going to use, you can just, if you're technical, you can go into theme JSON, make those adjustments yourself. For those who don't know, that's sort of where the settings for the theme, what's available are. But more and more, these things are being added to the full site editing style panel, where you can make these adjustments. Like Mike was saying, like I want to add new fonts. Now we can add new fonts directly with core in the front end, and you can change paddings and margins and global styles, and all that can get written down to the theme JSON as well. So it's such a fantastic way to handle things. I do understand why some people are hesitant, because it's a big, when I didn't understand the project, I was like, I always wanted to disable it. Like Gutenberg, not disable, classic, right?
Definitely.
But once I tried it, it's like, oh, this is good. And it has some rough edges, but there are things that we can do here that, you take for granted in Elementor, but it took them 5-6 years to add that in, right? And it's not like we started with that. And so it's a work in progress, yes, but it's so much nicer to work with. And there's some things that if you're a professional, you might have to get your hands dirty and get in the code and make adjustments, but you would also do that in classic themes as well. So same difference. But what I really like, I don't know if you're on the same page, but the fact that you can make these custom blocks, PHP, JavaScript, right? Yeah, you can use React if you want to use it in the editor, but you could just build it in PHP if you want. You just use the render PHP. Getting a bit technical here, but you can. It's just built in. It's worked like a shortcode. Totally. It's just in another file, and yeah, it has a build process. You'll learn that in 5 minutes. It's not like you have to do your own build process. It's already there, and so you do it, and then you get all this power that is co-located, and that's what I love. That now. Yeah, I have CSS code for this custom block. It won't be printed anywhere except on that page that has that block. And that PHP code won't run anywhere, won't be even read unless that is right there. That block is inside. And so that helps so much for performance that I don't know why everyone isn't like jumping over and saying this is fantastic. I just think we need to sort of spread the word a bit more.
Oh yeah. We've almost, it happened so quick and it's so powerful, and under the hood, we've already taken it for granted. But you're absolutely right. That happens for custom blocks, happens for all the core blocks. I have some custom styles in Ollie for blocks to make them look really nice. It only loads if you ever use the block. The same is true for the typography. You might load up in WordPress 5 or 6 fonts if you're wild and you want to do that. That's okay, because that font will not get loaded unless it is called on the page in a block.
Wow.
So we get this native kind of tree shaking, these performance enhancements, and every release it gets even better. So it's just like for free, totally free. Now they're doing image enhancements. So we'll have WebP and other formats that you can choose as a default. So smaller file sizes. All of these things happen. So you're right. I think there's a perception, and some people still don't love it. They're not quite buying into it, and that's okay. But I try to tell people, like, it's pretty awesome now. It gets better with every release. Imagine what it's like in 2 years. 2 years is so long in a project like this, with as quickly as it is improving. So I can't imagine where it is 2 years from now, and I'm excited to keep following it. And that's what Ollie's going to do. We're not going to go build a bunch of custom stuff. Like, it's all happening in WordPress. So we're just going to side right up against that and just take advantage of all that's coming out in WordPress.
I think that's a great way to handle it. Speaking of going crazy, what do you suggest as a designer for web developers, or maybe someone who's just starting out in the space? They want to create their own theme for a site, and they might go crazy and have a bunch of fonts and weights and styles, right? Colors. What is a good number or range of, like, how many fonts should one have? How many font sizes? How many colors? And what is really the purpose of limiting these?
Yeah, I'll answer it in reverse. The benefit of limiting it is a more cohesive design in the end. So then you don't have a bunch of random font sizes throughout your site and throughout your pages and throughout your sections. If you have a limited amount to choose from, you're more conscious of how you use them, and they can fit better into the overall design. Personally, I like max like 6 font sizes, and then even within that, some of them you'll use sparingly. Like in Ollie, there's like a really large one.
Right.
That's not to get used often. That's for like maybe a big H1 hero section or something like that. It's there for things like that, but you're not going to use that. In the same way, we have an extra small font size. You're not going to use that often, but there are going to be cases where you do, and it's going to prevent you from having to create your own. It's just there in the random times you need it. So if you take those 2 out, you're looking at maybe 4. And then you're like really getting in the sweet spot, because then if you can stick to that and you kind of build around that, then your design really is humming along. And you realize that you might not realize it when you're building a section or a page, but then when you're like 2 or 3 pages in and you're clicking around, you're like, whoa, this thing clicks together. It's nice. And there is some psychological thing about good design that is subconscious. And I think that's tying into it. I think humans, we like consistency. We like, you like that feeling. You might not know it, that you're feeling it, but there's something that tells you this is high quality, this is trustworthy. Good design feels trustworthy. And so I think that's that. Colors, I try to, oh, you know, I'm a pretty minimal dude when it comes to color, when it comes to typography. So just sticking to the dark grays, not quite black, dark grays, and some, you know, a few accent colors of that. So you might have a secondary gray that looks nice as like a subtitle or something like that. And then also within the WordPress color palette, so you have those kind of font colors, and then you have maybe something like a primary color for a brand color.
Right.
And again, I try to like get folks to stick to that and not add too many colors, because again, then your design kind of looks, it can get a little crazy. It can work too, don't get me wrong. With a great designer can make a very fun and vibrant color palette work. You can totally do it. But you have to have a plan going into it. You know, I think if you start with a blank page and you start with that color palette, I think you, by the time you get to the bottom of the page, you might regret having all those colors. But it can work. So, and I think that's another important thing is going into it with a design, you're always going to be better off, you know, than trying to design just fresh in the browser. At least that's me. I'm somebody who, I have to get it down in Figma first. And then I feel like, okay, now I can take it into the system and implement it and iterate where I need.
Right. So how do you do it? Do you, on Figma, let's say you're starting from scratch, you didn't have Ollie, you start your file, you start maybe from top to bottom, right? You're doing like hero section, blah, 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 right? Do you just start designing, and then what the first time you add a heading, do you already have a side panel where you're like, okay, so this is going to be my first size of heading, and then as you go along, you make another heading, you're like, okay, this is going to be my second one? Or do you first define like 5 sizes that you might use and then start designing?
I'm somebody who, I start like with a blank canvas almost always, like with a new site or a new, you know, pattern collection. I start fresh because I like to get out of the pattern of what I was designing previously
that makes sense.
To help me get something new and maybe something different that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I'll start designing fresh, blank canvas, and then I'll usually design the header, a hero, and maybe 2 sections first. That really helps me get like a design down, a direction. I get like the aesthetics, the kind of the design language that I'm going for. And only then do I start to really like systemize it, where it's like, okay, because I kind of need that many sections to know how the headings are going to break up and subsections and, you know, feature boxes. Then I can think about, okay, this makes sense to turn into a style, like a heading style, and then I go from there. But yeah, I usually do like a quarter of a full page first, just on the canvas. I don't use auto layout at that point. I'm just really quickly iterating. And if you look at my, like the start of a design, I might have 5 or 6 duplicated frames where I'm just kind of just trying something. I go back here, I'll delete it, I'll duplicate it. And then I'll land on something, and then I'll start to turn it into a design system. And my design systems are usually very small. They're kind of, they follow WordPress, right? They're like 5 or 6 font sizes, 1 or 2 fonts usually, and then the color palette, the minimal color palette, and then I go from there. So, and then I try to stay within that because again, for me particularly, I'm designing a product that is in a system like WordPress that has its own guardrails. So I have to design with those in mind along the way. Now, if you're designing something for a client site or something like that, you might have a little more liberty to get rid of those things. But because I'm distributing a product, it has limitations that I have to be aware of so that I can actually implement it and ship it. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And also, speaking of guardrails and all the things that WordPress does for you, I think it's also very nice that once you get into this flow of limiting, like sizes, for example, the interface in the editor will actually change based on the number of items that you have. So for those who don't know, if you have a lot of items, it'll be a drop down. which takes more work to use. However, if you stay within a certain limit, you'll see like X, XS, S, M, L, right? So it's just one click, you change the font size. So these little things that WordPress does for you as you sort of align to using design systems, I think is some of those little nifty Easter eggs that one can find.
I would love to get, I just was looking at that this morning because I'm releasing a kind of a refreshed homepage design for Ollie. And I saw that, I have a drop down, but if you switch to 2024, you get that nice little slider thing. And I was like, oh man, how do I get this thing down so I can get into that interface? And that kind of brings up the struggle of building a distributable product. Is like, once it's out there and people are using it, you can't just take away one of the font sizes. It throws their site for a loop. So you kind of have to be. And I was building Ollie very early. So, that's the part of the early adopter problem too, is like you get a product out there and you've kind of have these constraints on you. But we come up with clever ways of getting out of there and updating. And, I think also in WordPress, there's this idea, like, we started so early. There are going to be some updates that you have to get in there and just tweak a few things. We try to limit that as much as possible because I don't love having that when I'm using products. So, but it's kind of the reality of that, and it's still way easier than having to switch themes and do all this other stuff. So it's like, you might have to go and tweak a color here and there or something, but the trade-off is that you have a beautiful design system at your fingertips and it's totally free, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have all day long. So it's like, it's part of the offering.
It's great. And also, people don't realize this, or many people don't realize how much it goes into creating a product to be distributed, like Ollie. The other day, I was thinking of, like, I thought of you because I was looking into theme JSON version 3, right? And so I was like, man, I want to opt into new features. And then I was thinking, well, yeah, sure, I can change to version 3. But if someone is using a child of Ollie, for example, they're on version 2, you switch to version 3, what does that happen, right? What does that make?
Right,
I'm sorry, what side effects will that cause? And I was just thinking, wow, that's got to be a pain to manage, just because maybe you want to opt into all these new features, but then you have to make sure you have an upgrade path for your customers so that their child themes don't go off the rails.
It's tough. It's really tough. And upgrading to version 3 of that is something that's definitely on our roadmap. But you're right. It's the smallest changes in that file can have some pretty sweeping ramifications. So this is like, I've been building WordPress products for like a long time. I've dealt with this forever. You have to be very careful once you've shipped something to do that. And there's a little more flexibility with that in block themes, but it's still true that it's not like a SaaS, right? Where you change something and it's all in a centralized location. So they come to the site and it works as is. No, these people, they're running it on their sites, their client sites. The sites are all different. They have different amounts of plugins on each one. It's already a very volatile environment to have one of your products live. So that's its own thing. And then on top of that, trying to keep up with how fast WordPress is moving and be able to add all these features in and stay on your feet and not bring people's sites down. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And again, this is all free. This is like the free version of Ollie. It's just free, this is like, it might just look like a little kind of WordPress template, but there's so much that goes into it. And there's so much that goes into keeping it alive and updated and fresh and supported. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work for sure.
Yeah. And you've done a great job because the interface, for those who don't know, Ollie has this very nice interface, and I don't know what part of this is pro and what's not because I have both, but the pattern library, and I know you also have it on your website so people can just browse it on the site even though they don't have it. being able to browse those patterns, see what they look like, and then if you do have the pro license, being able to just grab one, copy the code, put it in, or insert it directly, that I think makes it way easier for people to use these and understand what they are, than anything I've seen before.
Yeah. So yeah, in Ollie Pro, we have a lot more patterns. So you just can get a lot of awesome designs, layouts, full page designs. And we built effectively a pattern browser, because this is like a cloud library. So we built a browser that looks very much like the pattern browser you see in WordPress, except we've added some more pro features, things that help you find things quicker, filter quicker. You can kind of browse by categories. You can copy patterns. You can see a live preview of it before you add it to the page. You can download it to your theme if you want. So we've kind of wrapped that experience around WordPress and made it feel very native, because we want it to feel like it's in WordPress. We're not trying to make things that feel like they're bolted on and that they don't belong. We want it to feel right. We want it to feel like it belongs in WordPress, because that's what we should all be working towards now. Now that we have all of these powerful features and design tooling in WordPress, this should be a cohesive experience for anybody who comes to it new. We can hopefully maybe get rid of this old era of everyone making the admin look how they want and all of these banners everywhere and notifications. It's like,
oh, don't get me started on the banners.
Can we please move on from that and have something that looks adult and professional and slick? And so that's what, anytime we do anything in WordPress, we design for that experience. So it's a choice that everyone has, but I feel like I'm hoping that we can all rally around that and really get serious about bringing the level of design way up here.
Do you use any like WordPress internals to build that interface, or is it just custom to make it look like WordPress?
No, we use as many WordPress core components as possible. So that is built with all of the things you see in the WordPress interface. Many of those have components in the WordPress component library. So buttons and menus and sidebar stuff, all of that we pull in so that you get that unified interface. There might be some things seamless. Yeah, it's meant to look that way, and it is because we use those underlying elements. And if there's ever a time where we have to code something custom, we just still make it look like the other components, So, and I think that's important. And again, it's hard work. It's not easy, kind of following the components and making sure that they're all there. And some of them are experimental and some of them aren't. But like, the experience that the user gets is a lot better. And so it's worth it for us to do that.
That makes sense. But yeah, it does look seamless. And I think one of the benefits of that is that I know probably some of those that you make custom are because they haven't exposed them, or they haven't exposed a similar one, but at some point they might, most likely. And so at that point you just replace it and it still looks the same, right? So
exactly.
This is all very exciting, especially like now with the interactivity API and the collaborative part coming into it. I think the platform is going in a very good direction as a platform, as a publishing system. I don't think there's anything like it. Like, sure, I can build something in React and Next, and I can use a CMS, but everything that's built on top is not there. I mean, here, if I want to just use it as a database, well, it's a little overkill, and I could probably do it better from scratch, doing it somewhere else in Laravel or Next. But all the additional tooling that people have made, the community has made through the years, that make it so easy for someone who's maybe not a professional course creator, right? They could just strap on LearnDash, right? Or any other type of tool. They want to use commerce, they could use WooCommerce, or they could use anything else for commerce, and just it'll work out of the box. You can make adjustments to it, you can make it look whatever you want, but it handles so much more than any other content management system out there. So with the direction that it's heading, with the interactivity API, with blocks, I think we're on a good path.
Oh yeah, for sure. Looks like my camera went out here. I'll try to pop it back on. But yeah, you make such a great point. And I think, the perception around WordPress has always been a little funny. And even still to this day, it's still kind of funny. But I think those opinions they're stuck in like before the block editor came. That's kind of what people think of WordPress, and in the cooler like Laravel and React and those things that have moved a lot quicker. They look at WordPress and it's, it's kind of a bit of a joke to some people, but I just don't. And a lot of those people, they're not paying attention to what's going on now. And so I get that they've moved on and whatever. But when I look at this thing, I don't see, as you don't, a comparison out there. You can use WordPress, and now that it has a JavaScript engine, you can make blocks that do whatever the hell you want. They can do anything. And they have this beautiful system underneath of it now, and we have a content editor, we have a site editor, an interactivity API. You get authentication in WordPress, which is in itself is so difficult to do. Other places, you just get it right out of the box. It's just been tested for 20 years. It's incredible. You can build anything on this platform, and it has better CMS than everywhere else. And you could do custom fields, and that's going to come to core in a more meaningful way. So all of that combined, to me, I'm looking at that. And, I kind of had a moment when this block editor came out, and I was like, where is this thing going? But once I played with it for just a few weeks, I was like, I saw the light. I was like, this thing is going to be crazy for WordPress, because it's what we always wanted in the platform but couldn't have, because it was just these old tiny MCE boxes. We're putting content in, and it looks different here and it looks different on the front end, but now we have this unified thing coming together. And I've seen some prototypes of where they want the WP admin and those interfaces to go, and it's going to blow people's minds, because once this vision comes together, again, I'm always like thinking, what's this thing like in 2 years? Let's get over these bumps, let's get over these rough edges in the UI. And I really do think it's going to be something that just totally underscores WordPress, and it's going to let us last for another 10 years at least, I think. I'm not worried about where WordPress is going. I'm not worried about the growth. I'm not worried about market share or anything like that. I trust that what's happening in WordPress now is going to sustain and take us to some new heights. And I don't even work for Automatic or anything like that. I just, as a technologist and a futurist, I can't help but think that, seeing what I see.
Yeah. Especially like you said, now that it has a JavaScript engine as well, along with everything else, that just opens up such a big scope of what you can do, because you can bring in any library you want now. So, you want to do some crazy, like, I don't know, React Flow diagramming tool that's drag and drop. Just bring it in, install the package, and go crazy, right? And so, and I've seen people doing this, and it works great. And then seeing what Seth Rubenstein is doing with their blocks and the interactivity API, that conversation blew my mind as well, because I was like, I saw the demos of the interactivity API. It looks fantastic, but you don't really understand, or one doesn't really understand what's going on, what it looks like. Yeah, sure, I could do that in jQuery, right? Or JavaScript, whatever. But then seeing how they took it apart and made their sort of atomic block thing, and have this block and this other block talk together, and it's all in the interface, no code involved once it's there. Yeah, you can do anything you want, and it doesn't have to look like WordPress or feel like WordPress. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just you have a fantastic CMS behind the scenes that's powering extraordinary experiences if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that the product market has been slow to adopt it, and I can talk for an hour about why I think that is. But I do think once companies do finally catch up and they see that possibility, and they realize that if we do invest here a little bit, and they will save a lot more money in the end, because they can concentrate it all around this experience. They have full control of it. And like you said, like your limits are really just your only imagination. You want to pull in some React packages, all of the stuff that comes there, go for it. You can do that. You want to do Vue, you can do that too. You can write old school JavaScript. You can really just do whatever you want. And again, I feel like we are catching up slowly but surely. We're catching up, and we'll get there. I think we'll get there. People need to lead and kind of get out there, write content, start building with this stuff, and sharing, and that will really help get us over the line, I think.
Yes. Yeah. This plugins specifically, like you said, one thing that really sort of made me understand, I think, like you were saying now, why is a person, I won't say who they are, but a person that's big in the space, they have a plugin company, fantastic plugins, fantastic service. And they recently said, like, their plugins, most of them don't work on blocks yet, which is fine because it's hard to convert everything. Oh yeah. But especially when you have a big customer base. But one of them recently said, like, oh, I just tried building a site on blocks, and it's an interesting experience. And that sort of clicked, and I was like, oh, they probably just have never tried it. Like the owners of the company have never tried it because they've been doing this for 15 years. And so now that they see it in action, oh, okay. So now it makes sense why people are reaching out and saying, hey, could you make it work with blocks? It's not a niche thing. It's like, this is WordPress.
This is WordPress.
Like, I don't know if you use the WooCommerce blocks. Yeah. It's sketchy at first, but the checkout block, it's fantastic. I mean, it needs work and adjustments and stuff, but out of the box, if you just need it to do what it's supposed to do, it's so seamless and so easy to use for clients that, I don't know, I'm very, very happy on where this is all going.
I think, you raise a good point about companies who, and I'm sorry, my camera keeps going in and out. I think it might be too warm in here, so it's whatever. But companies who have kind of a legacy blocks or products, I don't want to say legacy in a bad way, but just kind of it served old WordPress. I understand their hesitation to move into that space because maybe adoption hasn't been great, and it's just difficult. Like, a lot of WordPress companies are strapped for cash and resources. We don't operate on huge revenues in WordPress. Most of us don't. But I do think once they figure out how to create a path from their product into a block interface, it modernizes it. And like you said, it makes it available. When you install WordPress today, you get the block editor, you get the site editor. That is the experience you get out of the box. You have to go out of your way to install the old thing where your product works best. So you have to meet the industry where it's at right now. Any person who installs WordPress, they're getting that block experience. And the quicker you have something that can work in that experience, and by the way, your product probably will work a little bit better in that you can do more, you can add more settings, you can give it a visual aspect to it. You can extend your product's lifespan. You can maybe even charge more because now you have more settings or more options in there, and it's a better experience, and you can build the whole thing around. So again, it's an investment, and I think that has a lot to do with why adoption has been a little slow. But I do think the value is there for product owners to get in there and learn it, because like I said, love it or hate it, it's not going anywhere, and it's only going to get better. So that's what I would plan for next year, the year after, and start investing for that, because the legacy base is going to keep going like this. There might be a few million people using the classic editor plugin, but it's just going to keep getting smaller and smaller. And then the other side's going to get this way. So that's what you plan for. That's what you build for. And that's what I would invest in.
I agree. That's an excellent point. Even though the market looks big, it's just getting smaller, and the current version is going to get larger. Yeah.
I mean, probably, I don't know, how many WordPress installs happen a day? I don't even know. Maybe tens of thousands at least, maybe 100,000. All of those people are seeing maybe WordPress for the first time, and they're getting the block editor experience. They don't know anything else. That's what they know. So
And
that's where I'm playing. That's my sandbox.
Yeah, that's a great place to be. And specifically, like, I'll give you a good example then to everyone. Like WooCommerce, we talked about the checkout experience. It's great. Work in progress, but still very nice. However, you want to add something like custom checkout fields. And you go on the WordPress.com or WooCommerce.com marketplace, and there's this add-on fields plugin, right? And it's by one of these companies that has been doing this for a while, and they have no support for checkout blocks. And so what do you do as a customer? You're like, oh, so I can't. So then you have to revert your client or yourself to an old experience just because that feature that is not hard to do, by the way. Later I found the documentation on how to actually add those fields. It's there in, believe it or not, in the GitHub repo. It's a very quick path to converting these old school plugins to blocks in this particular scenario. I know others will be harder, but this particular scenario, there's a way to jump in. And so, yeah, I think what you said makes a lot of sense, asking plugin companies to try it and see what the experience is like, because a lot of, I mean, the base is only gonna keep growing, and you want to opt into latest features, right?
Yeah, and to your point about those folks who might not support those blocks, that might be an opportunity for another company, you know? So I know I've said 1,000 times the adoption has been a little slow, but as soon as they start to see the financial incentives, if you're not going to add those things, someone else will, and that might mean a whole new industry, a renaissance of block solutions that come out, and they'll be here whether you want to compete with them or not. So I think it's smart to get in that space, and again, like you said earlier, just kind of knowing this new way of coding and everything, it's going to benefit you in 1,000 different ways, not just your product, but being able to just ebb and flow with where WordPress is going is always going to be a great benefit for you. Yeah,
totally agree. Now, I don't want to keep you a bunch more time here. I know you're a very busy man, but I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. The first is for the person who may want to jump into the WordPress space and you take advantage of all this and actually do very good design. Do you have any recommendations about where someone can learn about design, not specifically WordPress, but design in general? Is there like a book or an online thing or what to search for so people understand what a design system means and how they can sort of make things cohesive?
That's a good question. I've been so out of the design space in general. I have my skill set and I just kind of go with it. But there was a course recently that a lot of people were talking about. I think it was called Radical Design. Jack McDade, who does Statamic, which is his own CMS. Check that one out. A lot of people were speaking very highly of that. I'm always a proponent of just plain old YouTube these days. The cool thing about YouTube is that creators get on there and they share design tips, and you don't have to buy into a course because they're incentivized because they're getting paid from YouTube to just create this content for free. So there's incredible resources out there. I would probably look at Figma courses. Because or Figma design channels there, because most people are using Figma at this point, and if you're not, you probably should be. It's kind of the design standard in the industry right now, and for good reason. It's an incredible bit of software, and it feels more like the web than it is design in a way. It's got components, got all the things, so it speaks both ways. It's not just a design canvas. It kind of feels like it's for the web. So and there's just tons of free content out there, tons. I think Figma.academy was another one that was popular for a while, and I think that one I think is really helpful because you're learning design along the way while you're also learning the Figma interface. And that's huge. That's like the best of both worlds. And like every tool, the better you learn the tool, the easier it is to design in there, because you're not messing with the tooling. You can just fluidly move through and get ideas from your brain to the canvas as quickly as possible. So the same is true for WordPress. The quicker you learn it, the less time you're spending tinkering this, and you go from prototype to design to publishing it, and you're done. So just learn those tools fluidly. So I would do that, and then yeah, just dig into just search on YouTube Figma tutorials, Figma designs, and there's so much content out there now, totally free. You can start a whole design career on YouTube if you want. You know, that's the beauty of the internet. It's just if I had this back in the day, my gosh, I was learning about design in books that were already probably dated 10 years, you know. So it was like so the fact that this is all out there now is an incredible resource. And in terms of like WordPress design stuff, the cool thing about Ollie is it's free, and same thing with 2024, it's free. It belongs to everyone. You can get in there and pick it apart and look at how we did things in there. You can learn about why I designed things a certain way and all the patterns the way they are. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, design, code, or otherwise. So I'm a pretty open book. I love sharing what I know. And if you find me on the internet, ask me a question. I'm happy to answer.
Those are great suggestions. I appreciate it, Mike. Definitely, and the tool part, right? Because when someone gets into Figma, if you understand that you made a good point about it being web oriented in a way, because you can have gaps and you can have auto layouts and things like that work the same way a browser will. And so if you don't use that, you have to sort of work manually a lot. But once you understand it, then it just becomes easier because it'll sort of map what you're going to see at the end, right?
That's right. Yep.
Great suggestion for everyone. Just go on YouTube, search for Figma tutorials, and learn WordPress. I think is also a great resource to find some information about WordPress. So the other question for you is going to be, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can, I'm on the social media, I'm almost exclusively at Mike McAlister on Twitter, X. I'm Mike McAlister there. And then MikeMcAlister.com. But my main project, as we've been talking about, is Ollie, and you can find that at OllieWP.com. And yeah, we have all kinds of video tutorials and just everything out there for that stuff. So I'm all over the place, but I'm mostly on Twitter. That's the only social media I use, so that's kind of where you can find me. And yeah, I love getting out there and meeting new folks. So follow me. Let's chat. I love chatting with Armando here. It was so cool to finally catch up and connect. So this was awesome.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was a blast. I'm really happy we were able to jump on the call, and look forward to seeing more Ollie content as well.
Cool, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.